What Once Was Mine, Chapter 31, Rapunzel. Gina's house was all snug and glowing warmly, tucked inside the friendly night like an apple in a pocket. Rapunzel broke out into a grin when she saw it, and then she heard the yelling. Lots of yelling. "How could you let her go on a trip like that by herself? Ma, you know it's mostly safe, but she doesn't know anything about the world." "Oh, you two. Young people think they know everything about the world and no one else does." "I'm home," Rapunzel called out gaily, throwing open the door. "Of course you are," the good wife said, beaming. "Thank the goddess," Rapunzel murmured, shaking her head. "Aha, I knew it!" Flynn cried, pointing an accusing finger at the mother and daughter. Then, "You're all right," and he threw his arms around Rapunzel. She enjoyed it immensely. He was much stronger than Mother Gothel, who didn't hug much anyway, and it was all encompassing. She was so tiny compared to him. And after too short or too long, Flynn dropped his arms and clapped her on the back like a comrade. "It's dark out there. Didn't you know what could have happened to you?" he demanded. "No," Rapunzel admitted. Flynn made a strangling noise in the back of his throat. "Okay, you're okay," Gina said, hugging her around the shoulders. This, too, was nice, but Rapunzel wished it were Flynn still embracing her. "How did it go, dear?" the old lady asked. "It was amazing," Rapunzel said. "I didn't understand it at first, that the flowers were stars, all the constellations aligned like they would be at night. Of course it was missing the moon, because the waxing crescent rises during the day, and then I looked up, and there it was, exactly overhead, and it glittered, and then my hair glowed, and then Pascal became this." She plucked the lizard off her shoulder triumphantly, and held him for all to see. "A chameleon?" the good wife asked in confusion. "They don't live anywhere near here. They're from the sun countries." "Then he's a kind of dragon?" Rapunzel asked breathlessly. "Yes," Flynn answered before Gina or her mother could, giving them a look. "Well, isn't he delightful?" the old woman said, putting her hand out. Pascal inched forward and gave her the longest finger a tentative lick, then rubbed the spine of his skull against her like a cat. "You have transformed him. How amazing!" "And now we know for certain what I suspected. Those stones were placed there to chart the movements of the moon and harness her power. Your mother must have consumed the tea of the moon drop and passed on its essence to you. Wonderful, if complicated. The power of the sun is simple. It heals, renews, refreshes, and reinvigorates. Had you been imbued with it, it would have taught you one simple incantation that would have wakened its power and allow you to become the mightiest healer in the land, for good or for evil as you would," she added with a wink. "The moon is not so simple. Varium et mutable. As an ancient, somewhat sexist phrase goes, just as its phases wax and wane in the sky, so does all the magic associated with it. When it is full, it comes closest to the power of the sun, glowing and round, but not quite. It heals, but not to the extent of the sun. And when it is new and the sky is black for the lack of its light, its magic brings death." Rapunzel frowned. "Wait, just during the new moon? A few days ago, when I had to kill the poor chicken, I think so that's possible. But when I was a baby, it was because I lost my temper and I killed my nurse. Who knows if it was the new moon at all?" "You say you're an expert in the heavens," the old woman said, crossing her arms. "You work it out. Do the math." Rapunzel frowned, thinking. Work it out? The moon was new a few days ago. This was her birthday week. Did that have anything to do with it? Her birthday came at the same time every year on the solar calendar. Every 12 months, of course, but the moon's months were shorter. The phases of the moon would have been different every year on her birthday, except... Then it came to her in a flash. The moon repeated her phases on the exact same solar calendar day, once every 19 years. And she had just turned 19, so 19 years ago at this time, the moon would have been new. She would have been just born, and her magic would have been deadly, so that explains the nurse. But the other times? She couldn't remember. All she could clearly think of was when she was very, very upset about killing a game hen. More than usual, she had gone to weep and look out the window for hours. The sky was as black as her mind, and the spirit fell. and the usually comforting stars were pinprick harsh, untwinkling. Each was a stab into her heart. There was no moon. Maybe? I can't say for certain. Well, I can, the good wife said. The moon has changed phases, and so has its power. Your familiar friend, Rapunzel corrected, putting her hand on Pascal's head, changed. He didn't die, and wasn't healed. That's another phase of lunar power. I don't know them all. You must start tracking your powers and how their effects work over the course of lunar month. Projects. Rapunzel's heart swelled. Imagine making magic every night and writing down how it worked, theorizing on it. Why, it would take up hours and hours of every day. She would need a whole new schedule. Except she wasn't in her tower anymore. Suddenly, Rapunzel felt like she was in one of those funny half-waking dreams, the ones in which you meet interesting characters or find a pretty cake or a treasure and are excited about showing or sharing them back home in the real world, and then you wake up and realize the cake was a lie, and people aren't real, and the treasure is a figment of your imagination. There's no meeting of the world of reality and dreaming, except for you, and you're a faulty medium, forgetting the other world as the day or night wears on. The good wife didn't seem to notice that Rapunzel was lost in her thoughts. Also, we can now guess how your, most likely powerless, decidedly unwitchy mother dealt with you as an infant. She probably didn't. You may not be able to remember it, but I'll wager a bag of masaki mushrooms, and when you were a babe, she either kept your hair swaddled or didn't touch you in those nights when the moon was new. You said you could have taught me an incantation to heal if I had the powers of the Sundrop Flower, Rapunzel said. If I didn't need an incantation to kill anyone or anything, I sort of thought of something and it happened. That's one of the reasons I thought I was so dangerous. Incantations are merely a way of reliability, summoning the power out of something. As an infant, you stumbled upon the right path or way of thinking. It's true if you were panicked now and it was the new moon, you might again accidentally call on those powers. But you're an adult now, so it's unlikely, and anyway, it's just once a month. The rest of the time your magic would do other things. Like summon gold, Flynn whispered hopefully to Gina. Rapunzel also wanted to press the good wife on that. But suddenly she noticed the food laid out on a tiny table. Heels of bread, butter, and uneventful mushrooms. Sorry, I gave all my snacks to Circle, she said, reaching out and stuffing a bit of each in her mouth. You gave? You made an offering? Gina's mother asked unblinkly. Ugly other people did, she answered with a shrug. The other woman laughed quietly. An innocent of the world knows how to propagate the old goddesses. You really are a natural, my dear. We must spend the next few days finding out as much as we can about your powers, while things are quiet, which I suspect they will not be for long. And I didn't need a scrying glass to predict that. If your path were different, I would beg you to stay here and study your powers and learn about the universe with me. Sounds great, Flynn said approvingly. We can hide out here for a nice long while and live, if not happily ever after, then at least live. After a year, I'll grow a beard and sneak off to Barcelona. Here I'll become a highwayman and rob carts until I have enough money to buy a nice little place by the sea. Rapunzel looked around at the pretty little hut. Everything was neat, in its place. The windows let in the smell of grass and summer flowers. The moon was almost out of view, a gleam at the edge of the pane, obscured by rose branches. It could have been a bright star. Night was soft, dark. Somewhere close the goats bleated and muttered to themselves, not quite settled. It was an ancient kind of heaven, peaceful, full of life and good things. If your path were different, stay here. Can I ever come back here? She asked, knowing in her heart that she would have to leave. A person cannot step into the same goat farm twice, for he is not the same woman, and it is not the same goat farm, the old woman quipped. You are welcome at my house any time, Rapunzel. The path will always be open to you, but you and it may not be the same. And after a significant shake of her cane, the good wife went outside, to do who knew what in the moonless night. You've had a long day, Flynn said, unfolding himself from where he was leaning against the wall. Maybe we should all call it a night. Rapunzel warmed to this immediately. His concern for her was like a sun breaking through the clouds when he let it show. But she shook her head. I'm too excited. There are too many things to think about, she admitted. I'll go to bed in a little while, but I want to think about and maybe write down what happened today before I forget anything that might be important for the magic to work. Back to the hayloft with you, Gina said with a smirk, gently pushing Flynn out the door. All right, but the room service is terrible here. I want to lodge a complaint. He let himself be steered, but turned back to look at Rapunzel in the eye and say, Good night, Princess. She shook her head. Good night, Flynn. After they were gone, she stood in the empty hut quietly for a moment, the only noise the crackling of the fire. Then she got to work. Thinking a bit of organization would help, Rapunzel took out the wanted poster of Flynn and made a chart in the back, dividing the rectangle into 28 days. She wrote the moon phases neatly on each. On day 1, new moon, she wrote murder hare. Now it was day 6, waxing crescent. Under she wrote transformative, lizard to dragon. Day 8 would be waxing half moon. That would be exciting, right? Maybe that would mean a really big change in her powers. For day 15, full moon, she wrote healing? She looked at her neat little chart and felt very pleased with herself. Projects. They were the best.